it's not just about knowing the different aspects of digital marketing. You also need to have that business mindset. You may or may not own a company, but regardless what, you need to think like an owner.
Being a CMO has almost the same amount of responsibility as being a founder.
I feel like I was in the box, right? The moment I step up from it, it feels like the world's opened up to me, and I just go like, oh, what should I start doing now? Like, there are so many things to do.
It's the determination, the hunger.
Yeah.
If you're
Grit.
hungry enough, grit.
That's why the
That's
name
it.
Grit. So I think by the end of the day is be open to experiment.
Yeah, and I think it's a very fresh perspective that I have not really heard a lot of entrepreneurs sharing. You don't essentially have to have all the answers.
Myself find that, hey, if I have that, right, life has been so much easier for me, right? Because
That's like a short masterclass, you guys. So if you have heard the past 5 minutes and if you want to start a company, these 3 things will make or break it. Okay, we are live, and I'm really happy to have Audrey Ling with us today. She is the founder of Grid Asia, which started very recently in 2023. You have also been a CMO for Next Academy for almost 7 years, if I'm not wrong. And you came from corporate. You were working in British American Tobacco as a management trainee. You spent 2 years in EY, and then you were like, okay, let's do something else. Let's do something along the lines of Next Academy. And you joined as a growth marketeer in 2015. And we'll talk about that a bit. And then you left Next Academy as a CMO in 2022, and you started your own organization called Grid Asia.
Yes.
Welcome to this show, Audrey.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Rafe. Thank you.
Amazing. So let's talk about your career. Like, how did you go from British American Tobacco, which is one of the best companies in the world, and then ENY, and then Next Academy? What was that switch for you to move to Next Academy? Because, of course, you were working in MNCs, and Next
Yeah.
Academy at the moment is in Singapore, Malaysia, and several other countries in Asia.
Yeah.
How did you make that move, and why?
Okay, so back then I was in corporate, and I was always wondering, how is life like, to have your own business or to be an entrepreneur. I don't know how it's like, right? Because it seems quite scary at the time. So when the opportunity came about, that was like, I can't remember the year exactly. I think it's 2014, because that time the startup scene was booming and everyone's talking about starting their own business. Like when you want to step out in a time where everyone seems to be quite open to the idea. It was a pretty good time because my family was quite okay with it as well. My mom was like, oh, just go and give it a try. And I thought about it, right? At the time, I didn't have commitments. I have like nothing much to take care of. I don't have a family, and so on and so forth. And I decided, okay, why not let's just do something different? Because if things don't work out, I can always go back to corporate, right? So that was what happened, and I took the switch. And I took a leap of faith.
That's amazing. Um, this is something that I wanted to ask you as soon as I saw that you were a growth marketeer in 2015.
Mhm.
What has changed as like if somebody was in growth marketing in 2015 versus in 2023?
So many things has changed. Like the digital landscape has changed so much.
Yes.
Back then, when I was just starting out, I realized that a lot of things are still very easy, like to implement, to get clients, to get leads and everything. It was very easy because it was like a blue, how to say, like it was a blue ocean. But as
Mm.
time goes on, and especially during the last 2 years when pandemic came and everyone just rushed online, it is becoming more and more saturated, and you need to find a niche in this ocean that isn't exactly blue already. It's probably getting redder and redder by the
Yeah.
day, right? And you needed to find where are the opportunities, what else can you do, how do you stand out from the crowd, and also like advertising. The advertising cost is going up. What else can you do? So back then and right now, things have been so different. Back then I thought it was hard, but when I look back today, and I'm like, well, back then was easy, man. Back then was easy.
Yes. And also, like, like now I lead a growth team in Mind Valley, and now we have tools like AI, where
Yeah.
we have ChatGPT, we have Midjourney, we have DALI, we have so many different tools with which like the role of growth has changed tremendously, because now you can be a copywriter, you can also be a designer, you can
Yeah.
also actually transform those designs into videos. You can do so much just by yourself, that the growth that we were doing, let's say 2 years ago, versus the growth that we are doing now, it's like substantially different. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why when I saw that you were a growth marketer in 2015, when the internet was actually booming, when the startup scene was actually becoming something that people would know what it would become today, um, I think I'm very impressed with how this role has changed, and how you have also taken, that role as a growth marketer and transformed yourself into a CMO. And I'm sure that there are a lot of the people out there who would want to do that, like join as a growth marketer and eventually become a chief growth officer or a chief marketing officer. How did you go from becoming a growth marketer to CMO in Next?
Okay, so I think there's a few things to really think about when you're at the growth marketer stage. I mean, you got in, sometimes you're a specialist, right? Like back then, I was kind of like a specialist, so I was very focused on paid ads, paid
Mm,
marketing. But eventually, you realize that hey, paid ads is just one part of the whole funnel. There's a lot more to look into. And you start exploring different stuff because there are so many aspects of digital marketing, and you realize that hey, all this while it's like playing chess. All this while, I've
mm,
only been using, let's just say, the bishop, right? I only been using the bishop to try to win the game. But hey, there are so many other characters out there. There is like the knight. There is what else? The queen. There is the pawns, and so on and so forth. And you realize that actually, the digital marketing is like playing a chess game, and there are so many characters there that you can look into to actually win this game together.
mm,
So as you grow from like when you started off as a marketer or growth marketer, whatever it is, that's something you need to keep in mind because you need to be a generalist as well with a certain depth, and then you can have your specialization. But having that generalist mindset, having that broad mindset with a certain depth helps you see things from a more holistic manner, help you see things from a bird's eye view to see how you can actually win this game. And I think when you grow towards, let's just say, a role of a lead or a role of a CMO, for example, it's not just about knowing the different aspects of digital marketing. You also need to have that business mindset. You may or may not own a company, but regardless what, you need to think like an owner already because by the end of the day, um, all the initiatives that you're doing needs to be aligned to the business goals. So I think when you have that sort of mindset, then naturally your progression will actually go up as well.
yeah, that's a brilliant way to put it. Yes, actually, this is what I was also saying in one of my podcasts earlier, that when it comes to marketing, people now don't only look at marketing separately, it has to
Mm.
go alongside your business strategy. And if your business strategy doesn't really gel with your marketing strategy and your KPIs, it's doomsday, right? Because essentially you're not really achieving those targets. um, and yeah, like being a CMO has almost the same amount of responsibility as being a founder, because essentially you're making the money, right?
Yeah, it is true, very true.
So, and then you were a CMO till 2022, and then how did you make that leap that okay, I have worked as a CMO, and now I gotta start my own organization, and you founded Grit Asia.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons, one of the biggest reasons is because with the previous company, I don't see where my future is after a period of time. And there is I mean, by the end of the day, it's about alignment, right? So where the direction of the company is going and where I want to be at, there is some misalignment. And I decided, okay, it's time to step out, right? It's time to give myself an opportunity to come out and to see the world, right?
Hmm.
So that was why I came out from Next Academy and started Grid Asia, and also giving me the chance to redefine what what I've been doing, the role that I have. Because back then, when you're in a company for a very long period of time, what happens is that it's not easy to think of the box. I feel like I was in the box, right? I feel like I don't. I can't explore too much stuff because I need to be in this box. I need to take care of all these things. But the
Hmm.
moment I step up from it, it feels like the world's open up to me and I just go like, oh, what should I start doing now? Like there are so many things to do. So I do see that there is a change the moment I actually step up from Next Academy and start with Asia.
Wow. Yeah, because I think a lot of the people who are working in an organization, there's that comfort, right? Like, okay, I've been here for a long time. I have
Mm.
been doing this for a while, and I do this fairly good. Like, of
Yeah.
course, when you talk about that box, you also know that, okay, man, I feel like I'm in a box, but I also do things very well. I'm good at
Yes.
my job. Uh,
Yes.
and leaving that comfort is not easy, man. Like making that decision that, okay, I am going to quit my regular paying job, and I'm going to take an adventure and become a founder, which has multitudes of other, I would say, challenges. And there are, you have to hire, you have to really build the company, you have to look at how would the website be. Like, you have to do everything from ground up.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
gave you that courage? Like, what gave you that courage that, okay, man, it's okay, I'll do it?
It is not easy. Can I just say that it is not easy,
Yes.
really? Like I never thought that it was that hard. I came out. I'm like, how hard can it be? I've done it once, and I came out. I'm like, oh man, this is
Yes.
not easy. Then I was thinking, at some point I was thinking maybe I should go back to being employed. Like at least I have people to do this for me, or at least I'm not alone in this journey. So it is always a constant battle. Honestly speaking, it was a battle. And it was only quite recent where I sat down and I told myself, you have to make a decision. You can't just be battling like, oh, do I, what, this is so hard. Maybe it's easier to do that path or whatnot. I needed to sit down and tell myself, okay, you have to decide. Do you want to do this or not? Where do you want
Mm.
to head to? So I think it's really internal, like it's just like a mind battle because it's very true. Coming out from your comfort zone is not going to be easy. And doing everything yourself. And right now, I felt like the responsibility is all my. I mean, it's my own life, it's my own company. The responsibility is on my hands. I just realized, wow. It's funny because back then in Next Academy, there was a lot of responsibility on me, right? But
Yeah.
even though there was so much weight on me, because there are other people over there, they may or may not contribute to helping me lift all this weight up. But the fact that they are there, I felt like, oh, you know what, this weight is shared, right? Even
Yes.
though they may not be the ones sharing it. But when you are starting out something, you felt all the weight on you, and you felt like I don't know who I can share this with. But me sitting down and really talking to myself and just say that, hey, you have to make a decision. Are you going to go all out or are you just going to switch?
Yeah.
I think that helps. That helps.
Absolutely. And it's the determination, essentially the hunger.
Yeah.
If you're
Great.
hungry
Great.
enough, grit.
That's why the
That's
name
it.
Great Teacher. I was like, when the name came about, it was quite a very interesting experience how the name came about, right? Like I was in the car and I was thinking what name should I have, and I was thinking for the name for the longest time, and then I was in the car and I was just thinking and I said, oh God, come give me a name, and on my on my left side there was this like bunch of CDs, and one of the CDs have this like tagline, what makes the great, right? GER. And
Mm.
that CD has been there for half a year, right? I've seen that tagline for the longest time and whatnot, and nothing came to mind, right? And when that day I was just in the car, and and suddenly at my peripheral vision I saw it, and I looked back, and suddenly there was just a word that just popped up in my mind, and it was grit. And I'm like, oh. And it's not the word that I usually use. I mean, I know
Yeah.
that word, but it's not like we talk about it or anything. And when that word came, I felt like, okay, so that is a word for the season for me as well. Because if I'm going to move out from my comfort zone, I would actually need grit. I would
Yes.
need to have that perseverance. I need to have that passion to hang on to it, right? So when the word came, it was really timely. I think it's a word for me personally. It's a word for me to
Oh my
remind
God.
me. Yeah,
That's fucking amazing, because I don't think people talk about this a lot. When it comes to naming your brand or naming your company, it takes so much mind power, and you constantly
yeah,
have this battle in your head. Not this name, not this. And if you finally like a name, then you don't find a
yeah.
website.
It was tough, right? When the name came, I was like, would I be able to get that name? And for me, I felt like this name is not really given. I mean, it's not me, my brain that churns out this name. I feel like it was given to me, right? And so
Yes.
the first thing I did, I went and looked for .com. I'm like, .com is gone, .co is gone, .io is gone. I was like, what else? Everything's gone. And I found, hey, Grid.Asia is available.
Yes.
Grid.sg is available. Grid.my is available. And I was like, oh, okay, that comes in handy, right? So I
Amazing.
just put those names.
You got the domain, and now you are Grid Asia, and you started like this year, and you already have 2,000 students. Um, and you are also consulting. It's a consulting house as well, right? So you're also consulting some entrepreneurs, companies,
Yeah,
and the core values that you hold right now in the company is excellence,
yeah,
integrity, and innovation.
yeah.
That's amazing. um, how do you, so when you came about this idea of, okay, this is the company that I want to build, there are two sides of this company, right? One side is the B2C side and the other side is the B2B side. What is your, like, how do you balance both?
Okay, so back then, when I was with Next Academy, very often we are on the B2C side. So right now,
Mm,
my goal is to be more on the B2B side actually. So if you're saying how do I balance both, I think more like, what do I intend to do? I intend to get on more to the B2B side because I believe that there will be a lot more impact over there. You see, in this market, especially the education market, I'm there is a lot of players there. It can be quite saturated. The truth is this, right? There's a lot of people, but I'm looking at myself and where is the value that I can bring? Where is the impact that I can bring? I really think that for me, bringing impact to companies would be a lot bigger, a lot better
mm,
because um, it's not about competition or not, but I think that's where my strength is. I mean, Rafi, you understand what I'm saying, right? Because we are talking about strategies, business strategies, as well as marketing, and very often businesses, a lot of businesses need that. A lot of individuals, they come in with the mindset, I want to learn how to use this different channels, which is fine, right? But because they do not have much exposure to business yet, sharing about the business strategies and so on, for a lot of them, they couldn't fully grasp it yet because quite a number of them probably just started their business. They haven't even reached the point where they need to make those big decisions, or they wanted to be a marketer, so they probably don't have a business right now. So
yeah.
that kind of perspective, they don't have the kind of perspective to understand certain things yet, right?
Mm,
But for companies, for marketing teams, they have been constantly bombarded by their bosses, like, "Hey, what's the numbers? How is this aligning to my business goals?" And they needed something more. So I believe that that's where I can get in, and that's why that's where I'm going to be focusing a lot more these days.
got it. Because like, I think differently, and of course everybody thinks differently because of their
Yeah,
expertise, and my expertise is in B2C. So of course I would always be like, yeah, B2C, you can scale a lot more, easy to get clients, you can look at CAC, you can do advertisement, and get them to consume a product which is online, so you don't even have to be physically available or be selling, blah 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 blah. But of course there are always companies who are serving B2B, and there are always companies who are serving B2C. For you, especially for Grid Asia, how did you decide that, okay, my focus is going to be B2B, B2C is just going to help me get a lot more clients for my B2B side of things?
how do I focus on that? I think because all this while I've always been doing more B2C, and I'm like, it's
Hmm.
time to try B2B. I
God.
think I never really think about, okay, why is it, I heard that it is a really good space to be in. Obviously, a lot of people are like, B2B is the way to go, man. But I think for me, it's really a challenge for me as well. Just going like, hey, we have never tried that. It's a new ocean. Let's go swim there. Yeah.
So it's basically a personal choice, right? Because I'm sure whoever is listening now might also have that question if they want to start something of their own, or if
Yeah.
they're already started something, but right now they don't know where the audience lies. And of
Yeah.
course, everybody has that question: should I go B2B? Should I go B2C? Do you have something to tell them?
I would just say sometimes you just need to try and experiment and ask yourself, right? What is the cost of experimenting these different audiences? If the
Mm.
cost of experimenting these different audiences is not big, just give it a try. If it doesn't work out, you can always just pivot. I mean, there are so many startups, so many businesses that pivoted like crazy. Look at Tiffany and Co. Today, you look at it and you say, "Oh, beautiful jewelry." But do you know what they were last time? They sell stationery. All right, from stationery to fine jewelry. How different is that, right?
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, so in the same way as well, like Grid Asia, yes, I may be doing education now, but down the road, I don't know what I'll be doing as well, right? I may pivot in between and just say, hey, things are not working out, or hey, you know what, I would like to give it a change. I would like to challenge myself in a different way. So I think by the end of the day is be open to experiment, right? And it's okay. It's okay that that you want to make a switch, right? Or if you look at it and just say that this is not the place I want to be at. I mean, I've invested some time here, but it's not a place I want to be at. It's okay to make that switch. So be ready to experiment. I think that the advice is be ready to experiment.
Yeah, and I think it's a very fresh perspective that I have not really heard a lot of entrepreneurs sharing, is that you don't essentially have to have all the answers, right?
Yeah.
You get answers as you embark on that journey, and eventually you will find what actually suits for you, what you like, and what is actually working out for you.
Hmm? Sorry, you were saying?
No, I'm saying, and what is actually working out for you? Because essentially, all the companies, like Alessio, when I was having an
Yeah.
interview with him, he also shared that, when he wanted to start an agency, he actually didn't want to start an agency. He wanted to do something else. But it was COVID times. He started taking one client to, he was like, okay, I want to make sure that I can, keep getting the food, keep paying the rent. And it was COVID time. So he started taking clients. And from
Mm.
then onwards, he just kept taking clients and he just kept enjoying that process. So you don't need to have all the answers with
Yes.
you. And as Audrey shared, experiment and learn during that journey. Amazing. So when you were starting Great Asia,
Mhm.
you said that you want to solve a problem that is basically educating the companies and also consulting them on on their business problems. How did you identify that that's the problem you want to solve? Because at the moment this market is not really unsaturated, there are so many other players. So how did
Yeah.
you make a decision that, okay, this is the problem that I'm going to solve and this is what I'm going to work on?
Okay, so I mean, being in this scene for quite some time, I, I, I thought about it. I mean, I get to talk to students as well, and what's the key problem? Like sometimes you realize that there are certain things that your audience they actually have a problem in that area, but they don't know that they have a problem in that area. That
Yep.
could be one of it as well, right? So I sat down and I started thinking, what is this about? Like, it's also the same. Like, what's the problem that I'm facing? Number one is that the digital scene is actually quite complex in navigating. Every day you hear something new just pop up. AI just pop up, and then some, and then now a bunch of AI tools that comes out every single day. I mean, wow, you have to keep updated with it. And beyond that, new platforms are popping up. Beyond that, some platforms are being deprecated. Maybe not to say they are fully deprecated, but they're being put at the back line, right? May not be as important anymore. There's so many changes that's happening over here. So number one, the digital scene is actually complex to navigate in. And then number two is that this is a very omni-channel era. Back then, you can use one channel, hit that person, and woof that person, and that's it. It's done. Like some products is still, some certain products can still help you do that. But the thing is this: people are a lot more omni-channel these days, right? They are moving
Yep.
here from one platform to another platform, one social media to another social media. People move so much, and the question is, are businesses also moving where the people are moving?
Mm.
So the second point is omni-channel, right? I feel like a lot of businesses um, do not really have a holistic view on being omni-channel. And I understand why, because out there in the market, everyone is actually, a lot of players out there are very silo. They just teach you, oh, one thing and one thing only, as though that one weapon can help you win the war, right? Certain products, as mentioned, certain businesses, that can still happen, right? But the truth is that people change a lot these days. People are moving, through different platforms these days. So by the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is that knowing how people have changed is so important because that affects us as a business. But a lot of businesses are still stuck in a very or silo channel mindset. And I think the third one is this, which like for me, it's very personal because I think this happens to me is workflow and routine. Very
Mm.
often people come in, I want to do digital marketing. Sure, I learned digital marketing and I start doing all these things. But every time we had the very ad hoc mindset, right? Like, okay, when things come about, I do it. When things come about, I do it. But do you have a workflow? Do you have, a template to actually help standardize these things? And
Yeah.
last time I don't. Right now I realize, wow, it is so important to have these things, and a lot of companies don't have that. And also workflow, right? Because the last thing you want is, especially for a company, the last thing you want is, hey, I someone left, and I need to hire someone new to come in. That person comes in, and I need to sit down with that person and tell them how to do from A to Z. That's going to take up so much of my time
Yeah.
educating and mentoring that person. So what if I have a workflow that people can just come in and can just plug in so easily? They just know what to do, right? So I think I know that Mind Valley is very good at workflows, right? So when people leave, people come in, you guys can just, whew, okay, get started, man. And I was very inspired by Mind Valley, and I just realized that a lot of companies actually need that, but a lot of companies
Mm.
don't need that. So with these three things like complexity, the omni-channel era, right, as well as the workflow, I think these are the three areas I just thought about it. Hey, I think if I were to use words to describe it, number one is simplicity. So this is what I want to pursue, or this is where I'm pursuing simplicity. Number two is holistic, right? Because you need to be more omni-channel, more strategic, thinking from a bird's eye view. And the third one is repeatable process. When you have a
Mm.
workflow, it is repeatable. So when you have all these three elements in place, you can move from one company to another company, or you can say, hey, I open company A, and then later I want to have a second business or third business. So long you have this tree, it is very easy for you to recreate a new business over and over again. Yeah. So that was the angle that because that was the angle that I want to pursue, and I'm pursuing, because it is also an angle that I myself find that, hey, if I have that, right, life has been so much easier for me, right? Because
Mm.
I didn't have that. So right now I'm a bit struggling, and I realize the importance of it. I'm putting those things down because those things I didn't thought about how important it is until it happened to me. And I realized, wow, this is so important, right? All these three elements need to come together to really make things sustainable. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I think that's like a short masterclass, you guys. So if you have heard the past 5 minutes, and if you want to start a company, or if you're already in a founding stage of a company, these three things will make or break it. Because like how Audrey was mentioning the importance of having workflows within Mind Valley, we call them DNAs, right? Like we want to make sure that there is a DNA for everything, how to write that script, how to do this process, how to, like how to's for every single thing. Because essentially, if you don't have that DNA, if you don't have that workflow, you won't know how to improve it. You won't. And
Yeah.
this is like with the era that we are in, where half of the things are being done by AI. You can be a lot more optimized if you know what are the things that you're supposed to do and how do you go about that workflow. That is brilliant. um, so you saw that problem because you were also going through that problem. You were like,
Yeah.
okay, man, I am going through that problem, and I have done so much with Next Academy, and now I've started my own company, and I'm still going through that. And then you build these flows, and you solve the problem for yourself, and you were like, okay, I want to give the solution to everybody else as well, who is potentially going through the same problem. And I'm sure everybody does go through the same problem, unless there is an epiphany and they're like, shit, man, DNAs, doesn't happen. So how how do you then go about building a product for that?
How do I go about building a product for that? So I've never been through the whole typical, product development stages or whatnot, like stage one, stage two, stage three. Um, I actually just put the things together, right? Like I just thought about it like this, what are the steps that I would love to have, right? This is like step one, step two, step three, and I'll just put it up. Like what are the videos that I need to, have to actually accompany with all these things that I have in mind, as well as what are the templates, right? And what are the workflows that I have, right? Like the workflows, the tools that's being used. So I just put them all together. I never really think too much about, what steps do I go for,
Mm.
step one, step two. And also, so in other words, I built it as and when, for me personally, I see the problem for myself as well. Because
Mm.
remember, I just said that it was a problem that I faced, and that's why I built it, right? And for me, I also look at the stages that I'm at, and I'm like, oh, at this stage, I actually really need this. So let's just build this for myself. And then, hey, this thing is really good. Okay, let's just share this with other people as well. So that was the process that I was going through. Not the typical, like, okay, step one, like building a car. No, probably, like, definitely not. For me, it's just looking at where I am
Mm.
and building things up. And then, and if it works for me, I know that it's going to work for someone else. But at the same time, I will also just observe, right? Observe how other people are doing their things. And I actually learn from a lot of people. So another thing that I do is actually I observe a lot. And if you know me, I would actually sometimes find a very interesting company and I'll sit there and I'll scroll through all their entire, like, let's just say marketing, what they have done all these years. I mean, as much as I can, right? All the information that I have found out about them. I look at their ads, I look at their social media, all the way down to the first post, right? And from there, I start seeing what have they done, what strategy have they
Mm.
done over here, what are the workflows? Okay, over here seems to start having something that is very repeatable. Why are they doing the same thing over and over? Is it because it worked, right? Oh, why is there a switch here? So I actually do that. I actually sit down and observe what people do. So that actually helps with product development as well. And that actually helps with seeing how other people do it instead of just staying in my own bubble. So I
Yeah.
do a lot of observation also, a
Yeah,
lot.
and I think that's one of the most vital things, right? Looking at the competitors, looking at people who have already done it. So you don't really necessarily have to reinvent the wheel, and
Yeah,
you go reverse engineer what they have done, use first principles thinking, and then you're like,
mm,
okay, this is what it is.
yeah,
That's amazing, Audrey. And how do you then? Okay, so you now have a product. You're like, okay, this is the product. First of all, of course, you identify who to sell it to, right? And of course, I'll take a guess and let me know if that is correct in one way or form. Like right now you have a website. On that website you're offering courses, and these courses are about digital marketing, are also about strategy, etc., etc., etc. And what you're seeing is that the students that are actually enrolling in those are also founders, CEOs, executives. And does it actually work in this way where these students enroll, and of course if they get value out of it, you also listen to their pain points, and if they need additional services, that's where you jump in and you're like, okay, I can solve this problem for you and really customize the solution for you? Or is it something else?
yeah. That is definitely one of the ways, right? Because right now, when I'm trying to build myself, in this space, for example, especially the B2B space, there's a lot of customization that needs to be done, and also, I think one of the key things is because I do not actually own an agency. So what I do is
Mhm.
if you own an agency, you get a very different perspective of things, right? You know when you're executing for clients, you get to hear things. So for me, my approach is very different. So let's just say I have students, I just sit down and hear the things that they are facing, right? The things they are facing, I give ideas as well. And then from there, I also hear a lot about their business. So they'll share a lot of their business with me. And we especially for my students, we do a bit of a mini coaching session where I
Mm.
actually know, so that I get in touch with the industries that they are in. And when I get in touch with the industries that they are in, it will always be at the back of my head. So whenever I'm out there doing like researching or anything, I'm like, oh, is this the business, right? How is it
Mm.
different from theirs? And then from there, very often I just and over there I noticed that there are things that people are generally lacking in. For example, they don't really know their flows very well. They don't really know their buyer journeys very well because those are actually really essential, right?
Yeah.
Like those what we call marketing fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
If you don't know your buyer journey, it's very hard for you to build your marketing funnel, right? When you don't really know your marketing funnel, how are you going to find out what are the metrics that are the important metrics that are within the marketing funnel that you need to look into to evaluate campaigns, right? So those are the things that and if you don't also sometimes they don't really know their buyers really well, like their customer avatars really well as well. So actually really just going in there and helping them with all these things,
Hmm.
that's the first step, right? Helping them with all these things actually it's so crucial, right?
Yeah.
Because if you can't get that right, you how are you going to get everything else right? I mean, everything else would be just like, shooting darts in the dark, right? But
Yeah.
if you get those things right, then you have the lights up, and now you can shoot your darts even more accurately.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like the process I was taking.
That's amazing. And you literally go there and build a base for them if they don't have a base. Really make them understand how you can scale by identifying these things. Once you identify these things, of course, on top of that, we can build on it so much.
Yeah.
Um, and right now, you have online courses, right? Do you also do physical workshops?
Yeah, I do. Right.
Got it.
So for me right now, it's a very interesting season because I'm looking at Brit Asia and I'm also looking at myself. I ask myself this, right? What would make me different from other people? Because
Mm.
it's true, there are a lot of other trainers out there, right? there are a lot of other coaches out there. There are a lot of other people out there. So what makes me different? And this is where I realized that I need to actually build my personal branding as well, because it needs
Mm.
to come in hand in hand. People do recently. Someone just asked like, "Oh, Audrey, you've been, you have started to create a lot more content." I'm like, yes, it is so important, because that is something that will make me stand out from a lot of people out there,
Yeah.
because and giving out my point of view. So even joining this podcast, thank you so much for inviting me
Of
on this
course.
podcast, right? Even joining this podcast gave me a chance to actually talk about my expertise, my knowledge,
Yes.
and all these things actually helps give credibility to me, right? And in the future, what people want to look for is not just to look for a digital marketing course or whatever, but people want to look for me because of my perspective, because
Mm.
of what I can bring on the table. So that is also another thing that I'm looking into very strongly right now. It's building personal IP. Something that I didn't do as much before this, but right now I know how important it is, because I need to double down on it. And in this world with AI that's coming about, everything can just be easily replaced, right? If you are just an unnamed, unknown person out there, you can be replaced just so easily with some AI that's just popped up. I mean, I'm sure there will be some AI one day, right? And that's where I realized, oh, so what would make me different? Like, what would make me different, and what could help me be sustainable in this, in this field? And I realized that personal branding is important, very,
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah. And I'm in the same journey, Audrey. Like, honestly, I have been thinking a lot about this
Yeah,
essentially because like we are in this physical world, and that physical world is good. We're happy, we have families, we have cats, we
yeah,
have pets, we have all the fun that we need. But there is another life that is happening simultaneously, which is your digital life. And
yeah,
digital life is becoming a lot more important day by day by day with
exactly.
AI tools, and also with the tech that is coming out now. You have a lot more computing power here than you had 20 years ago on supercomputers. So
Mm.
imagine what's going to happen in the next 5 6 years with Apple glasses coming out, like all of this. So of course, having that brand, having that presence digitally
Yeah.
is going to make or break what you do and how you show up in this world.
Yeah, it does. Like, it's crazy, because back then I say, "Oh, what's gonna happen 5 years down the road?" I can still imagine it. Now it's like, what can you imagine 1 year down the road? I'm like, 1 year, man. 1 year ago there was no Chat GPT. 1 year
Yeah.
later, things have been so different. I can't even imagine how one next year would be like. You get what I mean? Things change so crazily, so fast. And also the question for me is that, where am I, like, all these workflows, all these things that I'm doing, will I be replaceable too? Because AI is getting smarter and smarter. Would there be a need for educator in the future? Because AI will be the ultimate educator, right? So there's so many things that is happening. But nonetheless, I mean, I don't need to look at the future. We don't need to look at the future and be scared about it, because when it comes, we'll figure things out. But I think what's important is also really asking ourselves, um, who are we, right, in this world? Like, what kind of impact can we bring to this world? Um, and for me, I just thought about it. I'm like, yeah, it's not to say I need to be known, but I want to be known for as someone who give an impact to this world. And I don't want to live as a, I don't really want to live as an unknown person per se, right?
Yeah.
And for the things that I do, like the things that I do is should be a testimony of the things that I believe in as well. So
Yeah.
that's how I try to find alignment between myself, my brand, which is Great Asia, with and the things that I'm doing as well. So having the alignment, it's actually really good. And also another thing is that but it is also a decision that I make, right? It is also a decision that I make. Because I do understand that sometimes some business owners just go like, I don't want my face to be shown. I'm like, okay, yeah. I mean, that is your decision. That's your
Yeah.
choice, right? But in my space, in our space, we at least we do need that actually. We do need credibility. We do need,
Mhm.
if not, I'm no different from any marketer out there. We do need
Absolutely.
some credibility. Yeah.
Absolutely. And for everybody who's listening, Of course, you don't need to be scared of what's to come, right? Like AI or whatever technology that comes in the future, there's nothing to be scared of. Like when electricity came, a lot of the people were scared that shit, electricity will ruin all the jobs. Nobody will
Yeah.
have jobs. Machinery, nobody will have jobs. And then internet came, people were scared again. And with AI, now it's the same. But I don't think you will ever be replaced by AI, but you will definitely be replaced by somebody who knows how to use AI, because
Yes.
using AI is also a skill. It's also an art. Mind Valley is having right now an AI summit,
Mm,
and there is so much knowledge being shared on that. It's just mind blowing. Like every session that happens there, man, I think you should join it as well. It's live. Today is the last day. Um,
okay. Have
every
to go and check out.
session is so good. It brings so much value, and so, like, you can build music. You can literally build music just by typing words. I don't know if you know this tool, because we were talking about building reels before we start this
Yes.
podcast. I don't know if you have seen this tool called Opus.
No. No,
In
is it? How is it like? I'm like Googling
you
right
so I literally put my entire podcast on that, and it gave me 15 reels, giving me scores of on all those reels, and telling me that this is the propensity for it to go viral, and these are the points which are great hooks. Can you believe that? And it edited it, it shot it, it made sure it gave me captions. I could customize those captions, and it came out so perfect. Crazy.
Wow, I'm checking it right now. Man, you see, there are so many tools that are popping out, and I'm like, how am I going to know all these things, right? That's happening, and yeah, and I think that's the other thing is community. Definitely need a very strong community together to learn together and to grow together.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
And I think that's what Grid Asia is here for, right? Like you're building that community, you're building that platform where people could learn together, and of course they could also disperse that learning. We talked about building a product and finding audiences. You also shared about how you go from your courses, and then there are people who could be prospect clients, and then of course if they need any customized solution, you also suggest those customized solutions as well. But when it comes to pricing, how do you price your product?
try and error.
Of course.
Because sometimes sometimes you price some. I realize this, to some people whatever you have is so affordable, to some people whatever you have is expensive.
Yeah.
So by the end of the day, you can't. I realize I can't capture the entire market, right? Because there are all sorts of people out there with different price points that they're comfortable with. There are all sorts of people out there, and I asked myself, Audrey, with the let's just say if I price this price and with the amount of effort that I'm willing to put in, you know does it does it does it get, do you have peace? Like for myself, do I even have peace for myself? That's number one, right? And
Yeah.
number two is also the same thing, like when I market it out to people, and I just start observing how's their reaction. Because for me, I'm actually quite willing to actually just experiment with the pricing a bit. Sometimes I go like, okay, these are additional offers that I give, or sometimes, hey, you know what, there are certain I'm willing to give some amount of discounts, because I realized that this is a stage where I am quite flexible to actually try out this pricing, right? As mentioned, this is a new, like for me, this is a new business. So because it is a new business, I am quite flexible to throw in more offers, as well as quite flexible to play around with the pricing. So I'm not too afraid of that. But nonetheless, the most important thing is this, like for the amount of price I put in, and for the effort that I'm willing to put in, does it justify? Does it bring a sense of peace to me myself as well? And the scariest part is that sometimes we just want to compromise with everyone else's wishes, that you bring down the price really low, but the amount of work that you put in, you just realize, hey, by the end of the day, does this make sense? It doesn't make sense.
Mm.
So when there's a misalignment in that piece that you have for yourself, then you start having this question like, is whatever I'm doing purposeful? Does it make sense for me? Can I see myself doing it for the next 2 3 years? You start having those questions. If you do not have peace, you will have questions wondering if this is sustainable for you.
Absolutely. And I was reading this book called $100 Million Offer by Alex Hermosi. And it gives a very different perspective on pricing, right? It gives a perspective where it says that you should charge as high as you can because you're giving that value out. And also, this also helps you to get customers who are extremely dedicated, because essentially, let's say if you're consulting or if you're building other people's business, whatever you're sharing after learning with experience. And these are exactly like cheat sheets that people can apply. And but that application requires commitment. That application requires you to feel like, shit, I've paid so much, I want to make sure that I work on it and I make that a success. And that's why, like, I always think about value based pricing, and on top of value based pricing, how much additional you can charge for your services, so that
Yes.
you can give that value out with the happiness, the calm, and exactly what you were saying, that is it actually worth it. So you should always be feeling like, yes, damn, it's worth it and I'm going to give my best.
Yeah. It is always two ways, right? Like
Yeah.
they need to feel that it's worth it, but you yourself also need to feel that it's worth it. It needs to be a win-win situation. If not, you just feel like dreading going to work. You don't want that to happen. Yeah.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And of course, like at the moment, you are a lot more on the B2B space, but the funnel that you have right now starts from a B2C, and then people take courses, and essentially then they become clients. How do you build that audience? That okay, is it usually via ads, or there are other channels that you're using?
Okay, so there are a few things that I was thinking about. Is one of it is really, I mean, via ads is one thing, but right now because I'm doubling down on content, right? I was telling you about content.
Mm.
So building that content, consistent content, and then start building an email list is definitely something in the pipeline right
Yes.
now. And I think that is actually I because as mentioned, I've observed a lot of other creators out there, and I was looking at what they are doing, and I love what they are doing. I was like, man, these people, they are obviously selling courses to to the B2C market, but because of all the value bombs that they're giving out, like even I as a business will want to get them on board to consult me. You get what I mean? So I
Yes.
was looking at what they are doing, and I just say that I love what they're doing and I want to do the same as well. So which is why right now creating content. So the pipeline, like the the one that I'm doing now is creating consistent content. Once there is a consistent flow of content, I get into a certain routine and workflow. I know that I can create consistency. Then that's where the email building list will kick in, and would have consistent content for the people that are on my email list. And
Mm.
from there, educating them about marketing per se, or all the things that are happening in the digital world.
Yeah.
So, and from there, I'm sure that there will be people who would want to, who, because the angle that I'm coming in is not just, hey, here are interesting stuff for you, but the angle that I'll be coming in is also more on the, a bit more on the consulting angle as well. So when people read it, they can start thinking things for their own company. And then if they want to have a deeper conversation with me, they can reach out to me further.
Yeah, amazing. I feel like we're on the same journey, Audrey. Like
Yeah.
everything you say, I'm like, shit. Like I'm thinking about the same things. I'm doing the same things, which is fucking amazing. And this brings me to this question, which I was asked like 2 days ago when I was
Ah,
also consulting someone. And I was like, man, you gotta build an email list. Email list is your gold. That's where the gold is. And they were like, really? Emails still work? What would you say to that, Audrey?
I mean, okay, depending on which country you're at, right? Like if you're in China, obviously they don't use email, right? But in everywhere else in the world, if it's really good value, email still works. By the end of the day, it is all about value. Of course, you can also, some people, what they do is that they collect phone numbers, they open Telegram groups, and so on and so forth. So there is that way as well. But I mean, I think like be it using that way or using email. Some people actually create communities like Facebook groups also. So there are multiple ways. Collecting emails, there's that Facebook groups as well as Telegram, for example. But I think email is essentially the one that a lot of people are still using, right? Except for maybe China. But everywhere else in the world, we still use email. When we want to log into something, we still use email. And that is essentially like the godfather of, I don't know what's godfather of what, godfather of communicating with people, maybe. But the point is this, like if you're talking about Telegram, not everyone has Telegram. If you're talking about Facebook groups, the younger generation will be like, what is this? Right? What is this? But if you're talking about emails, pretty much everyone have emails because today it is still expected. Like if you have any services, you want to open any services, you want to get into any platforms, you need to you need to have an email.
Yeah.
So yeah, email is still important in that manner because a lot of people are still using it. Um, and sometimes people ask like, "Oh, email is dead. Like people don't really read emails and so on and so forth." If you give good value, people will pursue your newsletter.
Yes. And this is for every company out there. Like, you are essentially generating leads for the business opportunities that you are providing to your customers, period. And there are ways to generate those leads. The number one way, in my opinion and in Audrey's opinion, of course, is the email. Like, you gotta get that email in, because then people intentionally put that effort, that they put in their email, they submit their emails to get some content and some value out. You can do that, as Audrey mentioned, with Telegram groups, WhatsApp groups. There are Facebook groups now. There are IG communities. There are Facebook communities. There is threads. There is so much. But again, social media is not loud. It will always be loud. There are several people talking about several different things, and the attention span on social media is so low. Right? People just want to consume content in the shortest form possible. Right? That's why we have shorts. That's why we have reels. And but on emails, it's a different story. People take time to read, people take time to open, and there are these micro commitments which go a long way than just a lot of other profiles that we have on social.
Yeah, and another thing to add, right, with social media, there is a certain expectation for social media, right? Because in other words, they want things to be fast. If they were to ask you certain questions, they expect things to come back fast because that is essentially how social media is like, right? But with email, people do have, with email, even if they were to email back, people do have a certain expectation, like, oh, okay, it's okay, we're going to take a bit of time, that's still fine. So I
Yeah.
think the kind of things that you're using will really impact the expectation that people have on how you're going to be engaging them as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that brings me to this question, which is, how do you retain the audience? Because you're building short form content, and I loved your Instagram. I just checked it out as well. You're building that content, you're engaging people in. Do you have a retention strategy, or you are at the moment still in the experimentation phase?
Okay, so I am in experimentation phase, but at the same time, I was also, you're right, I was thinking about what else can what kind of value can I give? Back then, when I was with Next Academy, we often have, I think once a month, I can't remember already, once a month or uh, once, like twice a month, right? Like value bombs where students can just come and, ask any questions and we share even more interesting stuff that you probably won't see around. Like I won't share as much out in the open yet at the time. But one thing I also realized, like sometimes when you give certain things for free, right, people don't really value it.
Hmm.
Interesting, right? So so it's the same thing like water. Like if water is scarce, every single drop of water is so valuable. But when water is free, we know that water is important, but when water is free, you can see people just opening a tap and leaving the water running, right?
Yes.
And that was the same thing that was happening back then. I felt like, oh, you know what, I've been doing all these value things and people are like, oh, I want to come, I don't want to come, because it's free, right? They don't see like, oh man, there's a ongoing commitment to it. So that's something that and the other part, the question that you're saying, how do you retain people in a way where you can I mean, I'm giving them value, but they need to give me value back in return, right? I mean, to make sure that both sides are actually having a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Well, I think at the start I give, right? I give a lot of content on the public channels, but then on the private channels, for them they can put in some level of commitment, I mean monetary commitment,
Yeah.
and for me is I can give a lot more value bombs to them. I mean to them that is that's not easily seen out there, and giving them the opportunity to just ask a lot of questions, giving them opportunity to be coached on certain things as well. So that is definitely something that is also in the pipeline, to continuously give value on my side as well as to also get back some value from my potential customers also.
That's amazing. And This question is something that everybody asks me, and I would love to ask you as well. How
Mhm.
do you fund your business before having any audience? Like, audience is essential, and you can monetize the audience. But if
Yeah.
you don't have the audience, how do you fund it?
If I don't have the audience, how do I fund it? Actually, this is I tried multiple different ways, right? I tried ways where, well, I mean, I tried ways where wait, okay, when you're saying funding means that no, don't even have money for advertising,
Yeah, nothing.
like
Like,
everything from zero.
from zero, right? Like, after growth, after Next Academy, you, of course, you consult and you fund your consultancy with that. How did you start funding Grid? Because as far as I know, you have not really received any investment yet, right?
Yeah, yeah, correct. So for me, okay, for me, I was quite fortunate. So I do have my a lot of my students from before.
Mm,
So sometimes it's really just a word of mouth, like, hey, I'm doing something new, right? There's this kind of things that's happening. Would any of you guys be interested to join, right?
yeah,
So I get to leverage on something that I had previously. I think that is something that I've been very fortunate in that manner. I have something to leverage on.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, yeah. Not everybody has that, right? Like,
Yeah,
essentially,
exactly.
for entrepreneurs who are starting out today, they don't have an audience, they don't have students. What would you tell them to do? Build an audience first, or do road shows, knock on doors, sales calls?
Oh, honestly speaking, I just say go and do everything, man.
Yeah.
like that's the thing. When you have nothing and you want to start something, that's the part where you just go like, okay, let's just give every different things a try. Because by the end of the day, you want to, I mean, building an audience, creating content. That's one way that people actually do it, right? For example, I do see some people who, let's just say, started out with their e-commerce store, then the e-commerce store became really big and whatnot. Then they start creating content out of the e-commerce store, right? And sharing how they actually how they made it big as well. So
Yeah,
they had their own, like, they have their own story, and from their story they start creating content over there. So that's one way of creating content. Another way is just really just experiment and just, if door knocking is the way to go, just do it. Because I have friends who are in the insurance line, for example, and I was like, hey, how have you started? He's like, because he I mean, he was like, I can't remember. He said he was the $1 million round table or something. There's a term for it, right? He's like, Audrey, I literally just knock on doors. I don't know all these what advertising, Facebook ads, everything. I don't do one. He just said, I don't even create content. I don't even have a social media, and I just go and knock on doors, Audrey. Yeah, knock on doors, and that's how he got his million.
yeah.
So
You have to
there's no
hustle.
one right way. Yeah, there's no one right way per se. It's just that when you do it, you just need to be more consistent.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And that's the answer I was expecting. Like, you have to do everything. Like, you can't, like, of course, if you are master in one channel and if you're just starting out, great that you're a master in that channel and you can really go all out and build an audience in that channel. But if you don't, then you knock on doors, you reach out to people, you get in their inboxes, and you get shit done. Yeah. um, at the moment, besides referrals and word of mouth, what is the best lever for Grid Asia's growth?
Using those two, and then, like, of course, by the end of the day, I mean, running ads is just one of it, right? But also, right now, also building, like, for me, I'm also building that whole inbound marketing strategy in as well, which is using SEO. So
Yeah,
fortunately, thank goodness for AI and everything, so all these things can be hastened and sped up, right? So I'm really thankful with AI because it can speed up a lot of processes. So for example, SEO can be done pretty fast these days. When it comes to content creation, right now my process that I have has been cut down a lot, right, compared to 1 year ago, right? That's why I hated creating content back then, because I'm like, oh, so much work. And then if I get someone else to edit it for me, and it's not cheap, right? It's not cheap at all. But now with all these tools, it is so much easier. And I found, like, recently I found this other tool as well. Like, I thought it was quite cool. You can go check it out. It's called capsule.video. You can actually send a link to people, and then people can actually let's just say I sent a link to you, Rafi, and then you can actually just click on it and then use your camera and just record your thoughts on a certain thing, and then I will get alerted and then this tool will help me, cut the video up in a nice,
No
like,
ways.
nice manner. They don't really trim away your and ahs and stuff like that, but in a way they put the effects in that is so nice already that I
No
don't need to
way.
do any editing, and I can just download it in whatever format I want. Like, I just realized that there are so many of these tools. I no longer need to walk up to the person and go like, can I record you now? Yeah. So there are so many things that has there's so many AI related tools that's out there that can really speed up all these processes. And I am really this I'm like this little girl who gets so excited with all these tools. And honestly speaking, I'm also trying this thing out, trying that thing out, right? To see what are other things that I can bring to the table, what are other things that I can bring to Grid Asia,
Yeah.
to bring in more traffic, in a way where I don't need to spend money. Like, I want organic traffic, like
Let's
paid
go.
traffic. Paid traffic is fine, but then the happiest person who will be laughing over there would be like Mark Zuckerberg, right? Say, haha,
Yes.
you guys give me your money. But by the
Yes.
end of the day, I'm also at this stage where I need to think beyond paid. I want to know, uh, think out of the box. Like, hey, there are so many ways of doing things. Why do I always keep, sticking with one way? Why do I constantly rely on money to bring in more money? Which is okay, right? But is there any other ways for me to bring in consistent revenue flow, uh, without over reliance on like money? That's something that I'm
Absolutely.
also thinking for myself.
Absolutely. And the thing is, now with the tools that we have, they're a lot cheaper than, than really spending that money on ads. And of course, there are a lot of the people who would still spend money on ads because there are some people who want to grow fast and they
Yeah.
have the resources to do so. But people who don't want to or don't have the resources to, they can go organic route. They can also build content on several other platforms that we have and get that exposure out. Um, Having said that, so you, how do you what are some retention strategies that you use for your students, and of course for your clients? I'm sure you're not looking at retention, you're possibly looking at return rate, how many times they come back. So are there any strategies that you use for their retention?
Um, so right now, what I'm doing, like, let's just say for my clients, is just really just following up with them, right? Understanding, hey, like, after, let's just say, after you do one, training slash consulting session, then give it, some time, and then after that, hey, how are things going? Is there any place, anywhere that you need help with, and
Hmm.
so on. So that's how you just want to constantly just reach out to them. And also, when the good thing about being in corporate is sometimes when you have a foot in the door, there are other opportunities there as well. So it's for me to go and pursue other opportunities and just saying, hey, you know what, how are other parts of the departments, do they need this kind of trainings as well? Like, the moment you have a foot in the door, you have to talk to HR, hey, there are other trainings, would you like to have all these other trainings as well that are available? Um, so I think for corporate, that is the advantage that we could play around with, because for them, they do have the funds, right?
Yeah.
And so long they see the value that is coming in. So long they see the value that you can bring to the table, they're very willing to constantly stick with you. Yeah.
Amazing. And have you hired a team yet, or you are solo?
Uh, Okay, so for now, I am actually more on a solo sort of journey, for now. So if I need help with certain things, I actually do reach out to how to say, to freelancers, or to
Mm,
people that I already know, or to the people I've already trusted, right?
amazing.
I think one of the reasons why I decided not to jump straight into really just hiring, number one is, of course, well, if I were to hire, I need to use my own money to hire. That's definitely one way to look at it. Number two is also really just, when if I want to hire, I want to make sure that I hire right. I don't want to just hire for the sake of hiring. I mean, with a lot of all these tools that's happening right now, like with AI and everything, a lot of workflows are simplified. I'm very thankful for those things, for AI and whatnot. But when it comes to hiring, you're not just hiring a person for their skill, right? When you hire them, you are bringing in their energy as well. You are bringing in their mindsets as well, and you get affected if you hire wrong. If the energy is negative, the mindset is negative, you get affected also.
Yeah.
So but if you're hiring right, then you also get elevated. So I think hiring is very important in a way where it doesn't just impact you in terms of workflow. It impacts, especially when the company is so small or you just started out, it impacts you as a person. It is so important. So this is the moment where I feel like, okay, instead of just hiring for the sake of hiring, why not I just get like for all this, let's just say admin work and whatnot, I just outsource it so that I don't need to worry about those things and I can work on things that really matters to me.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then for if I ever see someone that like I really like that person, the question I ask, is there a way for me to collaborate with that person? Do I need to hire that person on board immediately? Like, is it necessary, or can I collaborate with that person? And very often I find is that, um, or at least so far, like people that I really like, they also like to hang out with, like to bounce idea with, like to do things with. I also find that they themselves have their own things as well. So
Yeah.
immediately me trying to hire them on board is also a bit hard because they have their own things. I guess, yeah. But then in other words, never mind. Like, is there a space for collaboration? Can we work together instead? Because for me personally, another thing that I really like is partnerships.
Yeah.
I think that's where you can bring exponential impact to yourself, to that person, and to the people around you. So I think
Agree.
I'm constantly looking out for collaborations and partnerships as well.
Wow. You're giving me a lot of content for reels, yeah. That's amazing.
Woo!
Let's do it. Let's do some shorts and TikToks. Okay.
Yeah,
So one thing that would be something personal that I would ask you, because now I'm looking. So I have an editor, because of course, editing takes the most amount of time when it comes to building content. So hiring an editor back home is of course a lot cheaper.
I want
So
to hire too.
you want to hire? That's
Or
good.
maybe I should look for you, or maybe you should have an agency for that.
Yeah, maybe I should build an agency, and whoever is building content, and I can offer those services from back home, because essentially,
Yeah,
like, it is way cheaper than what you would get in Malaysia, because
yeah,
I know that one video in Malaysia would cost you at least 3,000 to 3,005 ringgits, which is a lot of money for just one single video. But you want to
mm,
build content, you want to build content fast, you want to build reels, and you can't be paying dollars for building just one single reel. But I'm also contemplating on another thing, where should I hire a social media manager or not?
yeah,
Because for me, I see a lot more value in hiring a social media manager than doing edits, than getting an
yeah,
editor, because edits now are a lot easier, especially for a content that we build. It's not really rocket science. We can edit it really fast. But when it
yeah,
comes to social media manager, it's a lot harder, because you need somebody to share ideas with, and really somebody to see another perspective, because you yourself as a brand will try to portray the best sides of you, right?
true. You're right. You're right.
But a social media expert will tell you what are the trends and what you need to talk about a lot more. What do you think
Yeah.
about hiring a social media expert versus an editor? What would you choose?
I okay, so I think by the end of the day, the question is this. Like, I mean, they are both of them are very different, right? If you're having an editor, the editor is there to edit your videos, right? But the social media person, a social media expert, is there to see things from an overall value. Is there to strategize you as a person to actually reach to a certain level of where you want to be. So their roles are actually very different because editors are more doing the grunt work, right? The expert is more doing the how to say that make ideally they should be bringing you from point A to point whatever point you
Yes.
want to be. So I think for editors, because I was also thinking about that, like should I get an editor on board or whatnot, right? But I think first thing first for me is also asking, do I need things to be super perfect, right? So that's question number one. Do I need things to be perfect? So right now, a lot of things I'm doing, I'm like editing myself, solo editing. So even the workflow, even so I'm also optimizing the way I shoot as well, like the way
Mm.
I shoot and whatnot, in such a way where how is it possible that I can shoot in such a way that when I edit it, I can finish, let's just say I can be done with editing in like maybe in half an hour or less, right? That's one idea that I was like playing around with. But ideally, the editing in the future should be even lesser than half an hour, because how many half an hours I can have in a day, right? It's like 24 hours times two is what
48.
48. Yeah, so I only have 48 half an hours, right? And what, 48 videos. So the question that keeps coming back to me is, can I reduce that,
Yeah.
right? Can I reduce that? But of course, um I am, but at the same time, am I generating enough content to justify an editor? Huh. Because if you have editor but then you don't actually have enough content, then the editor will be like sitting there doing nothing, right? In a way. So now the next part is the social media expert. I think having a good social media expert is definitely worth it. The question is finding them. There are a lot more people out there who say that they themselves are social media experts, but they're actually just sitting there. For them, it's just, just give me a content and I'll just help you schedule the postings, but there is no thought behind it.
Mm.
So
Yes.
looking for that person is the hard part. It's like, I want a social media expert, bringing me from point A to point Z, right? But most of the people who do social media, they may call themselves expert, but you're looking for the gem. That gem is not easy to find. So if you haven't found that gem yet, then for us, we need to sit down and start strategizing ourselves. In the meantime, if it really takes up a lot of workload, you can hire someone to actually help you do that. I mean,
Yeah.
the person who may not be a gem, right? They'll do the typical posting, the scheduling, and typical stuff until you find the right person. That when the right person come in, then you'll be like, okay, you can take over the strategy. But if the right person hasn't come in yet, you still need to be in control of the strategy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very valid. Everything that you just said there resonates with me. I'm sure resonates with a lot of the people who are listening as well, because essentially you have to choose your battles, what you're good at. If you're good at editing and you know that, okay, a social media manager will help you. If you're good at social media and you don't think that you can hire somebody as good as you, then of course you do it yourself. But of course,
For
hiring
the
is also a skill.
for the moment, for the moment.
Absolutely. Like, if you honestly, if you want to grow, you have to learn how to hire right,
Yeah,
and how to delegate well. And
yeah.
it's not the easiest.
It is not the easiest. I'm learning as well. I I step on so many minds. I step on so many minds when it comes to hiring, right?
Yes.
And today I'm still wondering, so what makes a good hire? Because obviously I step on so many minds and I realize, Audrey, you know, I think you need to change the way you think.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, what do you think at the moment? I think you've already answered. How to effectively and healthily grow a business, because you talked about several channels that are available and not really being reliant on ads. But when it comes to business growth, how do you measure business growth? Is it usually revenue? Is it some other metric that you're looking at? um, and how does your business strategy evolve with that metric?
Okay, so I think okay, so right now, I mean the metrics that are very important for me will be leads, cost per lead. So and then also I mean sales, cost per sales, right? So those are very important to me. But because I'm also building content,
Hmm.
so content and like, so for me, when I know what I need, what is my goal, then I know the metrics that I need to have, right? So when I'm building content, I'm thinking about subscriber growth, for example. The raw leads growth. Raw leads meaning that people maybe come on board, sign up for my newsletter and whatnot. The raw leads growth, engagement rates. So those things are very
Yeah.
important for me because that is more, I guess, top of the funnel, right? So mid funnel will be leads, or more like, more like marketing or sales, more marketing qualified leads or sales qualified leads, that sort of level. And then after that, of course, sales, but and then building towards lifetime value as well, LTV. So making sure that, hey, these people are constantly coming back to me also.
Yeah. What about revenue?
Hmm?
What about revenue?
Revenue, revenue is sales lah.
Yeah. So have to,
Yeah,
right? Like, revenue
yeah,
has to, like, I think a lot of the companies look at revenue as their North
yeah.
Star metric, that of course if
It
revenue
is.
is in, everything is good.
Yeah,
um and of course for most of the business that is one of the main metrics. But
It
a lot of
is
the
always
companies also talk about, how, oh, I went from one employee to 100 employees, and at times, like, revenue is not the most important metric because of the nature of the business.
yeah.
But that also brings me to this question, which is basically about investments. Like,
Mhm.
would you are you looking for investments, or would you look for investment in future?
Um, it depends, right? Because when you are having investment, when you're having investors, you need to understand what is in it for them as well. So and I'm at this stage where I ask myself, do I need an investor? What do I need an investor for? Is it I need an investor because of the money, right? Or do I need an investor because of their expertise? So for
Yeah.
me, I think that and those are very valid questions because like if you're a startup, like tech startup especially, right? They would need investors for initial funding because they're building softwares, for example. They need to hire people. Fair enough, right? Like ask myself, do I need that? Probably not, right? At least not yet. Okay, so the next question is now do I need the funding for for ad like for marketing purposes as well? Because that's where a lot of startup companies they get investor money for to build their product as well as to market to to go to market. So okay, so I asked myself, do I need that? Okay, maybe not so much. There are many other ways to get money, right? So I
Mm.
don't really need that. But assuming the next reason why people get investors is because hey, these people have ways to get me into certain areas that I couldn't get into. That would be very valuable. So if that is something that is in my consideration that I want to get into a certain space, yeah, then I don't mind getting an investor in, right? Where the investor come in and the returns that comes out of it really multiplies. Then yes, that is to me that is smart money. So
Yeah.
that would be very very powerful. What else? Uh, okay, so like assuming when you hit a certain stage and you say, hey, I want investors to scale. When you hit a certain level and you want investors to scale, that is also a very good time to get investors. Because why? There's a difference getting investors very early on because when you're getting investors very early on, you don't actually have much bargaining power. So in other words, the amount of equity that you're giving out is actually quite big.
Yeah.
But when you go to a point where you are saying, I want to scale, means that you are doing well, means that you have better bargaining power, and it means
Yeah.
that, you will have a better negotiating power as well. And that's where if you want to involve an investor, feel free to do so. So I look at my own business. Which part of the life cycle am I on, right?
Yeah.
And I'm at a very initial stage for this company, and I ask myself, okay, if that's the case, do I need investors? And also another question is, um, like the moment you have investors on board, the next thing is that then this company is not fully yours, right? You cannot just make decisions or pivot anyhow you want, right? You cannot just say, okay, today I just want to change my direction entirely. You cannot. You need to be accountable to that as well. So for me, I also do ask myself that question. Okay, Audrey, like with the current direction that we are going, is this direction that you can foresee yourself going for the next X amount of years, right?
Yeah.
So those are key questions that I ask myself before I actually get an investors.
That's amazing. So now that we are reaching to the end of this podcast,
Yeah.
the last question that I would have is, if you had to give an advice to your own self, but when you were starting your career, what advice would you give?
I should join Mind Valley.
Yeah, that's a very good advice. Very good advice.
um yeah, I mean in Mind Valley, as mentioned, Mind Valley is actually a place that I've been very it has been quite a journey, right? I've met a couple of people from Mind Valley and I really love the people who came out from Mind Valley, and I'm like, I should have been in Mind Valley. Maybe I still have a chance one day. Other than that, the advice would be, it's okay. Just give it a try. Just do it. Just yeah, just step out. Just do it. But also know that just take calculated risk, right? Because by the end of the day, it's not like you're starting a business and you're putting your entire life savings on it, right?
Yeah.
You need to just be smart about it. You need to ask yourself if okay, what is the cost of me putting all this effort in, right? And then also to say, hey, how do I if things are not working out, let's just say, if things are not working out, where do I draw the line, right? So those are the few things, right? Okay, like how much time do I give myself to do this, right? If I reach whatever level I reach, if I reach this level, what's next, right? If I don't reach this level, what's next? Just kind of create yourself a timeline, and don't need to be so don't need to hold don't need to be so personal about it. Like if things didn't work out the way you want, don't need to be upset about it. If
Yeah.
things work out beyond the way you want, great, but you don't need to be so crazily proud about it. Like I'm the best in the world, right? You don't need to. Just be very objective and just say, okay, it works. Let's see if it can be. Let's see it can be replicated, and I can do this for something else as well. So I think for me it's also taking an approach of more like of how you invest, like doing investment. So if you become very emotional with the ups and downs, it's very painful because entrepreneurial journey is not the easiest, right? There will be ups and downs, and the ups and downs are very volatile.
Yeah.
So you just need to kind of set that. There are times for you to, yes, grieve, and there's time for you to worry, or there's time for you to celebrate, but um, but look at it calmly. Okay, things are not working out. Fine, what's next? Okay, things are working out very well. Okay, what's next, right? So just be calm about, whatever that's happening. And when you have clarity, it's very easy for you to take the next step. But if you do not have clarity and you're rushing through things, one wrong step will lead you to multiple wrong steps. So I think calmness is the key when you are doing
Absolutely.
your business.
That's beautiful, Audrey. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for being on this show and sharing so much wisdom with everyone, with so much transparency and so much honesty and so much love. I really appreciate for you taking time out on a Sunday morning and really doing this with us. If somebody wants to reach out to you, how can they reach out to you?
Well, I guess they can email me at Audrey, AUDR. Actually, you can email me at A. Wait, you can cut that because
Okay.
I'm thinking which email is better. Okay. You can email me at Audrey, aliasgrid.asia, right? This is AUDREY, alias, GRIT.asia. Or you can just reach out to me on social media, right? Which is grit.asia, GRIT.asia. You can find me on multiple social media.
Absolutely. I'll also share your link in the description, your email in the description, your LinkedIn, your company website, so that everybody can reach out to you. But having said that, thank you, Audrey, for being here. Really
Thank
appreciate.
you so much for this time. Thank you.